Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are once again, busying ourselves, keeping ourselves occupied. And I remembered another tale I would like to pass on to you. Now, at Land's End, at the end of the cliff, down here, there's a rock. Now, this rock is a very famous rock. It's called the Armed Knight, so it is. Now, the Armed Knight is a very splendid rock, and on the right of it, if you ever walk down the pathway from Grebe Valley, and you look at it, you'll see a little bear on the right-hand side. Now, that little bear has got nothing to do with the story I'm going to tell you. I just thought it was worth mentioning. Anyway, what it is that rock is very, very famous, and artists down through the centuries have painted pictures of it, and photographers have photographed it, and they've even did drawings and written little articles about it. But you see, the one thing that nobody really mentions is that if you stand to the left of it and look out at the sea in front of it, at low tide, it must be low tide, otherwise the water would be too deep to see through. And what it is that if you stand on a sunny day at low tide and you look out to sea, you will see right in front of the Armed Knight a huge circular black hole, a shadow, really dark. And that hole is known as the Great Basin because it was caused by every time the tide went in and out, the water and the current in the bottom of the sea caused a whirlpool. And the whirlpool would drag all the pebbles and sand in a circle. As the current was so strong, it would go round and around as the tide went in and out. And over the millions and millions of years, it ground a hole in the shape of a basin, the type that you would eat your soup out of. And it was so deep that if you stood and looked into it, you wouldn't see the bottom. Now, that's strange enough as it is, but in the bottom of that hole lives a very strange creature indeed. He's called the Great Leviathan, the mighty spindly bubblefish of Land's End. Now, the Leviathan, he lives down in the dark and the slimy weed, and he's an anomaly of nature due to the fact there is only one. Now, he sits down there with his great huge golden eyes and a mouth so wide and full of teeth that he could swallow you whole and not even notice. But the reason he's called the spindly bubblefish is that his head is covered in sharp spines, really long, and his fins, when he opens them, have spikes and spines that are really long, and all the colours of the rainbow. And he sits there quietly in the dark, like that. Anyway, what happens? He's fairly harmless, even with being such a size, and he's okay until there's a full moon. Now, when the full moon comes, it shines on the sea by the Longship's lighthouse, and it's beautiful. It shimmers like millions of diamonds moving in the tide. Now, that's when the mermaids come. Hundreds and hundreds of mermaids all come, and they gather round the rim of the Great Basin, and they look down into the black abyss, and they start very quietly to sing, gently at first, getting louder and louder, until they awaken the mighty Leviathan, the great spindly bubblefish of Land's End, and he moves his great bulk through the slimy weed and the darkness until he reaches the center of the basin, and he looks up at the moon shimmering through the dark green water, and he listens to the mermaid singing, and he starts to blow bubbles like that. And these bubbles, they rise up towards the surface of the sea, but before they reach the surface, they touch the moonlight shining through the water, and as soon as the moonlight touches the bubbles, they turn into crystals, and they rain back down upon the mighty bubblefish, whereupon he opens up his huge fins and he wafts them into a great big pile. Now, the mermaids take this opportunity to swim down and gather as many as the bubbles together as they can, using any receptacle they can lay their hands on, and they take them away because the mermaids make mermaid jewelry with them, you see. Some make beautiful crowns with seashells, and some make necklaces with different colored corals and seaweeds, and others make bracelets and all sorts of beautiful things they make. But in their haste to move the bubbles, what happens is sometimes they'll drop a few, and those bubbles are rolled around outside the great basin in the tide, unobserved by anybody, until there is a storm. Now when the storm comes, and the waves crash upon the rocks and everything gets washed up. Now, Felix the Mighty, I don't think I've introduced you to him yet, but he is a cat that lives at Land's End. He is the first and last cat of Britain, pirate extraordinaire, and he's also what you would call a beachcomber. And what he does, he goes down after a great storm and he looks on the beach and he finds strange things and articles that have been washed up from old wrecks from years gone by, and he brings them back here and he puts them on a shelf up there. I'm sorry I can't show you at the moment, but you see what he does is also that he looks for bubblefish bubbles, because they're very, very valuable. And if he finds a bubblefish bubble, because he knows where to look, what he does, he pops it in his mouth. And also too, like that. And what he does, he brings those bubbles back here and he puts them into his little chest. Now, let me show you. Here we go. And this is where he puts the mighty Leviathan, the great spindly bubblefish bubbles, into this little box. Do you want to see? Shall I show you? No? You do? Okay. Look. These are the bubbles from the mighty Leviathan. They catch the beauty and the colour and everything. It's lovely. Anyway, some people I've shown these to, they've looked at them and said, oh, they're nothing but marbles. But let me tell you this, when men found out about the value of the bubbles from the mighty Leviathan himself, they thought, aha, we can fool people into buying fake ones. So they worked on it and they made little glass balls, and they called them bubbles, which in Latin, mar is sea, and bubbles are bubbles. So they were saying sea bubbles, but over the years, though the marbles changed, or bubbles changed to marbles. So those were just made by men, but these are made by the mighty Leviathan himself. Now, if you're ever come to Land's End, do pop down and have a look at the Arm Knight. is very interesting, and look for that bear on top. 'Tis very strange, because in the winter he remains brown, but when the springtime comes and all the birds start to nest among the rocks, he turns into a polar bear, 'cause he goes white. Anyway, have a lovely time later, and maybe I'll catch up with you again if I can, and maybe I'll tell you all about Nilbog, the Piskie that lives in the barrow of Land's End. Bye.